Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we got deep dives for Gorr and Valkyrie. I'm gonna start by breaking down Gorr's deep dive. What kind of abilities does he have, what they are centered about, what are my worries, my initial impressions, and first opinions. Do not take this for like kind of final set of thoughts, obviously, because it's still very early. We still have bare minimum amount of information. We're still gonna get to see many CCP videos, get our own hands on him, test him by ourselves, and so on and so forth. So this is just kind of like initial impression and ability breakdown video from what we know so far. So Gorr is going to be centered around having tons of debuffs on opponent and quite a few buffs on himself. Those buffs by themselves don't really do too much. The only kind of actual buffs that he's going to be able to get is going to be his regen when he gets hit or when he gets power burned, then wishes that increases the potency of his damage over time effects, and level 2 is going to give him access to furies. So effectively he really just gets the fury buffs. He gets buffs, but all of them are very straightforward with a simple function of damage. There's no utility burst buffs aside from his awaken ability, which we're going to talk later on. He does have access to shock, bleed, poison, and degeneration in total. Degeneration can be accessed only when the opposing champion is immune to either shock, bleed, or poison. Those debuffs by themselves, by the looks of it, do not really do all that much damage initially, at the very least, even with the vicious buffs active. And damage is definitely going to be one of the things that, we can't necessarily take away from these deep dives, because the damage is always misleading in them. But the numbers were kind of low enough to make me somewhat worried. On the upside, he's also going to have an insane power gain once per fight. If you do have more than 20 debuffs on the opponent, you basically get an instant level 3, which is the type of ability that I'm always quite a big fan of. And his rotation, as explained later, is basically level 2, level 1, and then immediately shoot up to level 3 for most part. So the only immunity that he houses really is the immunity to heal block. If Willpower Master is active, it is removed, and each rank grants Gorr an indefinite wishes buff, increasing the potency of damage over time effects by 25%. So, it's going to be very beneficial to run Willpower with this guy. Also, he's going to have these heresy charges that he gains after defeating gods or elders. Typically, they are max 3. On the final fight of the quest, you can get additional 1. And those heresy charges also increase potency of his effects. Basically, they don't really do much past that point. And these are the shadow magic buffs. The shadow magic buffs don't really do anything. They just enable him to inflict the corresponding debuffs. So you're going to get your bleed shadow magic, poison shadow magic, shock shadow magic, and then you cycle through them. You activate a new one with a light finishing combo, and with medium finishing combos, you place a corresponding debuff on the opponent of whichever buffs you have active. Now, as we can see here, they last for 20 seconds, and there are ways to pause them, so you will probably spend most of the fight with having quite a few of these active. You can probably get like around 6 total, so 2 of each active in that amount of time, which means that every time you finish a medium combo, do like medium, light, medium, you're going to be placing 6 debuffs on the opponent. Now, again, individually, they do not do the most amount of damage, but probably when you add them all together, they will look quite decent. And he does have regeneration when getting struck that gets more potent. That regeneration regenerates 16% of your missing health, and then further increased by 12.5% based on your heresy charges, and even further if you fight against gods or elders. Now, this is a cool thing where you can see he gets multiples of these regen stacks every time his power is burned. And he will also have access to Undermine buff, which basically is going to let him be unblockable whenever he gets auto-blocked, which in combination should make him, again, a really great counter for Penny Parker. Who would have thought Kabam presented a fairly annoying champion on defense, and now is pumping up counters for her left, right, and center. From what I have seen so far, I think I still prefer Hulkling as a direct counter to Penny Parker, but Gorr obviously is immune to heal block, so I don't have to worry about that. If you do get power burned, you will get regeneration that recovers all of that missing health, basically. And then he has Undermined, which can, bypass Penny's auto block. So he already is without doubt going to look like a very potent Penny Parker counter. No real surprise there. Now, here's just shown that his buffs and debuffs are paused during, definitely buffs are paused during the special attacks with his own or opponent's special attacks. And then he can carry on and increase that duration of pausing with level 1. I believe that's the function of level 1, to pause these shadow buffs that he gets. Here we can see that awakened ability in action there, as he gets that undermine. And now his awakened ability fully described is gaining a shadow magic buff also grants undermine for 9 seconds, granting an unblockable to any opponent that auto blocks. Personal damaging debuff duration is increased by up to 4 seconds. This further increased by additional half a second, flat against gods and elders, and for each stack of heresy. Gain 1 stack of heresy for the first time entering the fight on the final node in the quest. Then you get up to 4 stacks there. Again, when his damage, the biggest hit on his level 2 I saw was like 13k with the 4 Furies active. Those Furies come from level 2, and basically you get 1 Fury for level 2 and then additional Fury for each type of debuff or your shadow buff, one or the other. But basically you can get up to 4 Furies with that level 2, and then whenever you use a special attack, you refresh them. But yeah, I must say that even with those Furies, and again, deep dives always have a misleading damage. I want to emphasize on that. But all of these damage showcases were kind of low enough to somewhat make me worry. We'll see how it works out. I'm sure it's going to be much better than looks in a deep dive, but he did not seem to be super hard hitting. Again, in terms of his utility, virtually all of it is hidden in the undermine buff and then access to damage over time debuffs. Even the mentions of where you should use or could use Gorr the Godbutcher were virtually limited to, he can do buffed up, he can do distract, he can do acid wash, which, you know, is the basic requirement. If you have access to poison, any champion can do acid wash. If you have access to 3 buffs, any champion can do buffed up. So those are fairly generic nodes that were kind of mentioned in his breakdown, which really does make me, again, think, where would you use Gorr? Because, for instance, Null, you know, functions very similarly in a sense that he puts on a ton of debuffs on opponent. The only difference is that he doesn't really get any buffs. But other than that, you know, Null can shut down a Wade and auto-block with his Necrosword hits, which is, you know, again, inbuilt utility. He can heal with Liquid Courage Double Edge, which Gorr, you know, doesn't even have access from willpower. So even in matchups where most champions would be able to regain some health, he will not be able to do so because he, well, removes his own willpower. And yeah, so I'm not 100% sure what I think of Gorr so far. I'm gonna be honest, it didn't blow me away. I think the fact that he can be a very good penny counter is great. If damage checks out, I think he can be a decently good champion, but he's still gonna require fairly substantial ramp up. So basically, in order to get this 6 Shadow Strike buffs, you need to kind of do like 5 combos. And only then you kind of start building up debuffs and doing damage. And I'm really not yet have been able to 100% put on my finger what would you want to use him for ideally, aside from potentially fighting Penny. But even that, you know, Hulkling seems like a better option. So we'll see how he lands in contest. Again, this is very early. These are by no means like my final thoughts on him. Let's check out his synergies here. And now we have Shadow Magic buff durations increased by 2 seconds, which, you know, is fair enough. I'm sure it's, you know, somewhat useful. Don't think it's a must-have synergy. Recovery reduction from poison effects on Gorr is 50% less effective. But doesn't he remove the willpower anyway? I'm not too sure how this is meant to work. Now we have Gorr with MCOC, while the opponent's inflicted with at least 15 damaging debuffs, get an indefinite true damage buff. Again, as far as true buffs are concerned, true damage is by far the worst. This would have been much better if it was true strike, true accuracy, true focus, true sense, whatever else. So true damage, you know. Okay, he again does ton of damage over time debuffs, which I assume is a big part of his overall damage, so I'm not sure how vital it's going to be. MCOC, while Enrage is active, the burst of energy damage from heavy attack charges twice as fast. You know, it's kind of neat. It's not gonna dramatically change how good MCOC is. Now, the synergy with Null, heavy hits, grant, and non-stacking wishes buff for 10 seconds, increasing the potency of damage over time effects for 20%. You know, that's okay, cool, good. He does have a ton of damage over time effects. Additional wishes is not bad. Now we're going to have Null. While the opponent's corrupted, Necrosword attacks inflict additional instant bleed, dealing 30% of attack rating as damage. That's good. Some extra damage for Null if need be. Again, nothing really game-changing right there. But again, here we can see, I think it's a rank 4 with 3 wishes active, with 4 furies. And you don't see, like, you know, insane amounts of damage over time effects, even with, like, 20 of them active. So we'll see how effective he really is when it comes to the game. But, yeah, the numbers, again, never trust the numbers, never base your opinions on the numbers. But in this case, the numbers are low enough to definitely make me worry. Again, utility piece, having Undermine is cool, but other than that, it's just access damage over time effects. Whilst being reliant on buffs that directly don't really do anything. Like, all of his buffs come together to just boost his damage. The cool thing, again, is that he does have that once per fight heavy attack can grant him basically a full 3 bars of power, and his special 3 does have a ton of abilities that increase his special attack damage based on the amount of debuffs that you have, based on who you're fighting, based on how many heresy charges you have, all that stuff. So that could be quite interesting. You know, as a finish closer, we can see how hard he thinks his level 3 is. But yeah, so far, I can't say that I have been absolutely blown away with Gorr. And that, you know, you should absolutely chase him. But there is something that tells me that he's going to have super high prestige, though. Which is going to make everybody chase him. Either way, let me know what you guys think about him so far. I will leave a link to the deep dive video in full in the video description. But meanwhile, I'm going to catch you guys later. I need to get to Valkyrie's deep dive breakdown. See ya. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the